You have no money or not enough of it to live securely. So what can you do when you need legal assistance? I'm Dan Ringer, and we'll talk about legal aid right now on The Law Works.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
The Law Works is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. The West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and justice system.
Law is expensive, and despite what we may want to believe, the courts are not available to everyone on an equal basis. Generally, you have to be able to pay to play. My guests are Adrienne Worthy, Executive Director of Legal Aid of West Virginia, and Christine Schneider, a supervising attorney with Legal Aid. Christine, Adrienne, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Everybody hears about legal aid, but what is it?
Well, in thinking about your intro there, where people need access to the court system, we are an agency of last resort that gives low-income and vulnerable folks access to the court system, like folks who have means have access to the court system. We provide legal services and advocacy to West Virginians in every part of the state and in a variety of different settings, but most often the courtroom.
A variety of different settings. Besides being in a courtroom, what would those settings be?
Well, actually, legal aid is multifaceted, I guess is one way to describe it. We operate 3 different advocacy components with the traditional civil legal services, a legal aid lawyer being one piece of it. But we also operate an advocacy project for folks with behavioral health concerns, families, children, and then a whole other project that deals with advocacy for individuals in nursing homes. So those other settings could be before administrative agencies, before school boards, that type of thing.
Well, when you started, you actually described 2 different populations. One was low income and the other was vulnerable.
Right.
So it's not always a matter of money?
Not always a matter of money. I think probably it's a better way to say it might be a matter of power. When we talk about vulnerable people, we talk about individuals who are in nursing homes trying to live out their life in dignity. We talk about families with kids with behavioral health challenges who may be low income and don't know how to address their problems through a school system. So income is an aspect. People who can afford lawyers typically don't ask for our help, but we're dealing with a variety of populations.
Well, how do people ask for your help? You're there, and you pretty much look like a law firm. There are many, many law firms in West Virginia. So how does someone get hold of you if they think they need your help?
Well, we receive calls and people ask for our help. Right now we have one call center, and so every call to any local office will be directed to one calling office that we have in the Charleston office. And they ask for our help, and we ask a series of questions. They have to meet, for the most part, they have to meet our income guidelines, and we have some restrictions about helping U.S. citizens. We can only help U.S. citizens, and there are some exceptions to that. We can't do any criminal matters. We can't represent people who are incarcerated, but we, for the most part, can help anyone with their civil matters.
Well, we often hear on the Cops and Robbers TV shows, somebody reads what's called the Miranda rights, and so you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney. If you can't afford an attorney will be appointed for you. That's not universally true.
That's correct. We have a lot of people who call up and say, I was in court, I talked to the magistrate or I talked to the judge, and they said, I have a right to have an attorney, and I said, I can't afford one, and the judge said, well, then you have to call legal aid. So a lot of people think that we have to help them if they have an income that's too low to afford an attorney. But we're a nonprofit law firm, and we have to explain we're not a state agency. We can't help everyone, and we just don't have the resources to help everyone.
And I think the judicial system, of course, is doing the right thing by telling people to call us, but there is no constitutional right to a lawyer in a civil case, the kind of work that we do. And I think that there is that expectation among a lot of people that we will be there to help. We want to be, but we have, as a system nationwide, traditionally been very under-resourced. And I did want to say that what is interesting is in other parts of the country, not West Virginia yet, there's a discussion underway called a civil Gideon, essentially making it a right for people in some civil cases where something like the custody of their children or cases where there's a significant loss, making it that they would have the right to an attorney. They're experimenting with this around the country.
Well, the roadblock to that, I suspect, is how do you pay for it? I was asked by the American Bar Association a few weeks ago to participate in a survey, and the crux of the survey was the court system is underfunded. Tell us about your experiences. Now recommend to us what we should do about this underfunded court system. And I thought that recommendation was pretty much a no-brainer. What do you do if you're underfunded? You fund it properly. But that's getting harder and harder. And to talk about expanding legal assistance for needy people, needy in, I guess, in a variety of ways, is where's that funding going to come from? So let's talk about your funding.
Okay.
How you doing?
Well, up until recently, we had been making some significant progress. I think there is a recognition, a growing recognition in this country that support for legal aid is vital to the efficient and effective functioning of our legal system. And legal aid here in West Virginia had been receiving more grants, expanding our funding, and we had been kind of hanging on and had been proud of the growth. We had increased the number of lawyers and the number of services. I think the threat on the horizon, that's a threat, not only to us, but around the country to our legal system, is that the core of our funding has always been federal funding. It has to be. The combination of state and foundation and individual funding will never be enough to support a system, a legal aid system that adequately functions. So the federal government has played a key role. With what is happening in Congress and the examination of the federal budget, it is very possible that the system we built here in West Virginia and around the country is the very core of it is threatened.
I was doing a bit of reading about legal aid funding, and I came across this news item. Apparently, there is pending in Congress a proposal, in the House of Representatives, a proposal to cut $75 million from what's called the Legal Services Corporation,
right, they're our
which
funder.
is money channeled through them for the upcoming fiscal year. $75 million cut, and that would be about a 14% cut from the current year's budget, but it has to be realized in a 6-month period. So for the last 6 months of the current fiscal year, that would be a 28% cut.
Significant.
What does that mean to you?
To us, it means people. It means in dollar figures over $500,000, $600,000, depending on how they play it out and when they play it out. Significant. And we have really tightened our belts over the last year, knowing that things like this were coming. I think for us what it means is that we will could no longer have as many people providing services to needy folks as we currently do now. And that's frightening because the demand has increased 20% over the last year. We are getting 20% more calls, I think reflective of the economy.
How often do you have to say no?
We have created this new system where we are trying not to say absolutely no. We are trying to give anybody who calls us something. And again, that requires some resources, but it may be a brochure, it may be a pamphlet, some level of information, maybe writing a letter for them. But, and then of course, if we're able to help them, providing full representation. But the pool of people that we're able to do that for is diminishing as our resources diminish.
I can envision somebody calling you with the most important problem in the world. Now, obviously, it would be
To them.
their world, yes. But it's an important problem, and you being relegated to a position of saying, yeah, we can help you, read this, and good luck. And that's not doing it.
That's not what the founders of our country imagined in terms of setting up our legal system as the cornerstone to our democracy, where you have the haves and the have-nots. That is not what was envisioned.
I don't know what was envisioned. I hear some people argue that the founders intended very specific, very literal things when they wrote the Constitution, that we should take them literally, you should apply the Constitution that was written. And I have the feeling that they didn't envision the society we've got today, that they couldn't. It was like envisioning airplanes. They couldn't envision that, and they can't envision this great divide that we've got. We're talking about legal aid. My guests are Adrienne Worthy, Executive Director of Legal Aid of West Virginia, and Christine Schneider, a supervising attorney with Legal Aid. I'm Dan Ringer, and this is The Law Works. How many offices do you have?
We have 12 offices statewide, and the combination of the offices cover every county in the state. We've got offices in Wheeling, Morgantown, Clarksburg, Elkins, Martinsburg, Parkersburg, Charleston, Huntington, Logan, Beckley, Princeton, and Lewisburg.
Very good. Yeah.
What's the tune you sing that to? That's impressive that you could do that. I was waiting for you to forget one. Okay, you got 12 offices. We've got 55 counties. What's the biggest territory one of your offices covers?
We have, in Martinsburg, it covers 5 counties. Here in Morgantown, we cover 3 counties. We've got people in our office who cover whole huge portions of the state or all of the state. So everyone does something a little bit different.
Circuit riding.
Circuit,
Yeah.
yes.
In Charleston, it's about 8 offices, 8 counties.
7, I think. Yeah.
And I think Harrison County is about 8. It's a large number of counties.
It is large.
That means, though, if your attorneys are doing the kind of work where they have to go to court, they're going to be on the road a huge amount of time.
And they never really get to know one judge really well, which is really important for knowing what the judge wants and what to expect.
Well, and most lawyers recognize and will tell you if you ask them that if they have to drive to the next county or they're in a car for an hour, the only thing they're doing is driving that car, maybe thinking a little bit, but it doesn't allow them to get to know the client. It doesn't allow them to review the case file. So you may have to go to County X for a 1 hour or even a 30-minute hearing, but you may have to drive for 2 hours to get there. So you've got a 4-hour travel time for a 30-minute hearing, and you just can't do anything else. Adrienne, how many lawyers, not support personnel, how many lawyers are working for Legal Aid currently?
Right now we have about 55 lawyers who work for us statewide, and some of them are full-time, some of them are managers, some are on special projects. But I mean, if you were equating it, of course, to West Virginia, in theory we have 1 lawyer per county. Doesn't quite work out that way, though.
Are you feeling the need?
Absolutely not. And as I said, I think what is frustrating is that we had reached over the last couple of years through a combination of increased federal funding, more state funding, private foundation funding, a lot of support from the public, sort of a floor level of services that we hope to build on. Nowhere at all matching the need, but at least sort of a place where we felt comfortable that we could then grow. And again, that's the concern, is seeing what has been built recently go away with the threats with the federal funding.
Who are the lawyers that come to work for you?
Well, Christine is one of them. Christine?
Well, I knew when I came to law school that I wanted to help people, and I wanted to try and figure out how I could connect the middle class or people under the middle class to some type of knowledge or empowerment to understand the law, because I felt that that was most missing. I was a journalist before I came to law school. I worked for a newspaper for 4 years, and that was the
We'll
thing.
forgive you for that.
That was the thing that kept coming back to me most often is, we don't know what the law is on this. How do we find it? This was before the internet was so prevalent, but that's where I saw the most need, in an all-encompassing office where we did a little bit of everything. And it all came, most of the time, it came down to, what is the law here? Nobody knows what their rights are, and nobody knows, what they can do legally unless they have $5,000, $10,000 to pay a lawyer. So I think that there are a lot of people like me who decided to go to law school for that reason, and the opportunity to help people in that way came up immediately in law school. There were a lot of opportunities, and that led me to be probably a pretty favorable applicant when it came time to look for a job.
Well, she is also, there are many people like Christine in the program who are idealistic, who came for those reasons. We also have a sort of this group of people that joined in the very early days of legal aid and have incredible experience and knowledge, who've stayed with us, who have chosen this as a career and have worked for us for 20, 30 years. And then we have this other interesting group. We have a number of people with other careers, former corporate lawyers, or people who have nurses, just real interesting other backgrounds, who then go to law school and decide that this is what they want to do. A fascinating collection of people, but united under this real commitment to the clients that we serve.
I find it interesting when I think of the lawyers that I know who were in their early years legal aid attorneys and what they have gone on to become and do. We've had Supreme Court justices who started out as legal aid attorneys.
Federal judges.
In West Virginia, large city mayors were legal aid attorneys. And frankly, some of the best lawyers that I know of have been legal aid attorneys in the early days, and then have used that experience to go on and do other things. But the one thing that I am significantly aware of is they never leave it behind them.
Mm-hmm. That is very true, and I think that we see that in how they give back, the passion that they talk about, that being an influence in their career. I feel like even if people leave legal aid to go on to other things, there's always a piece of them, a piece of legal aid that goes with them.
What are the alternatives to legal aid?
Well, I think there is this sense among some that the private bar, that government may not have a role in providing services, legal services to low-income people, and that it's really the responsibility of the private bar to step up and provide that. I'm not sure I think that's a very realistic view. We have a lot of lawyers who already volunteer with us, who are private attorneys, trying to make a living, who offer their volunteer time with us. But to match the need with those attorneys who are available, I just don't think is realistic.
We're talking about legal aid. My guests are Adrienne Worthy, Executive Director of Legal Aid of West Virginia, and Christine Schneider, a supervising attorney with Legal Aid. I'm Dan Ringer, and this is The Law Works. Well, one alternative to legal aid is to go without.
What I've seen recently, I've been with Legal Aid for about 7.5 years, and every client that I get, if we're able to meet one-on-one, I'll at least give them advice, and if I can take their case and represent them, then I will. But so many times I've given this packet and I've said, here's how to fill it out. If they want to file for divorce or something like that, or file a complaint in magistrate court, here's the form. It's very straightforward and pretty simple. You just fill it out, turn it in, here's what you do with it. And I noticed that after a few years that these people were coming back and they hadn't done it. There were obstacles for one reason or another. And then just this past fall, we had a longtime legal aid attorney retire, and he spoke to the whole group, the whole 120 of us or 130 of us, and he said, I've learned that over my 25 years or so here that there is no substitute for representation, that if you think that you can send someone out the door with some information in a packet, it's not anything near what you can give to someone by actually representing them. And I like I said, I've just recently found that to be true by having clients come back a year or 2 years later and saying, I couldn't do it. There were just some minor deficiencies, service problems or something, and they're so overwhelmed by it that they
The
give up.
technicalities of litigation are huge, and lawyers go gray. It's coming. Wait for it. Lawyers go gray worrying about the technicalities. How do I get somebody to hand this document to somebody else? How do I prove that it was handed? Who do I sue? Somebody suing me, how do I say no? Those are serious problems for lawyers to deal with. And when you turn to somebody who maybe has graduated from high school or sadly even college and say, here, do it yourself, that's a huge burden on them. And I just relatively recently became aware of some statistics that I find truly depressing, that the rate of, I'll call it functional literacy, that is up to the level where you can recognize a McDonald's sign or an Exxon sign or a stop sign, but that's about all you can read. Up to that level, the figures are huge in West Virginia. Montague County, where they call it the flagship university, where West Virginia University is located, 14% of the population in Montague County are essentially illiterate. They can just barely squeak by. In one of the two most highly educated counties, the other one being Cabell County, where Marshall is. But when you get into some of the more rural, more poverty-stricken counties, that figure can be as high as 60%. And giving them a packet and say, here, go get your own divorce, isn't going to work.
Well, and I think one of the statistics that I hear so much is that low-income people experience legal problems at about the same rate as the general population. It would be unthinkable for a person of means to go into a courtroom where there is an issue of violence, where there is the potential loss of a child or a home or a source of income, and not have a lawyer with them. And the idea that it is acceptable, that huge numbers in our state can't even access legal aid and are out there as pro se litigants. I know that our judicial system is feeling the wear and tear, both in terms of efficiency and effectiveness, of having this mass of unrepresented litigants in their courtrooms on a regular basis.
I had one longtime circuit judge tell me that when he walked into his courtroom and he looked out, and there at one table was client and lawyer, and there at the other table was, we call it a pro se litigant, that is a person who represents themselves without a lawyer. He said the thought that goes through his mind is terror, because he's got to protect both sides equally, but here's a bunny rabbit compared to a bear.
Right.
And when lawyers go to court as clients, when they are having a legal issue to be heard, they hire lawyers. Every one of them that I have ever talked to has at least said do this. Now, some don't follow their own advice, much usually to their detriment. But lawyers hire lawyers. Other people need them too. If somebody needs to call legal aid, how do they get in touch with you?
As Christine mentioned, we have have created a specialized intake unit where anybody from around the state can give us a call. And I'm going to look at my cheat sheet here, Dan, because I don't.
Let's not give the wrong number.
No, I don't want to give the wrong number. This is 1-866-255-4370. And the phone is answered by a paralegal who then spends some time talking with them about the legal concerns. And then we sort it out about what we're able to do for them. If it's something that one of our local office lawyers can help with, then it gets routed to that local office. If it's something we're not, then we handle it otherwise.
I want to repeat that number. It's 1-866-255-4370. And Legal Aid is instituting or reinstituting a program that I have great love for. It's the Lawyer Information Service. You may have heard us talk about this on this series in past years. It's being reintroduced. If you have a problem and want to know if you need a lawyer, you can discuss your problem with a lawyer by calling 1-800 1-800-642-3617. 1-800-642-3617, Tuesday evenings from 6 to 8. Adrienne, Christine, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you also for being with us. On behalf of the Law Works, I'm Dan Rare. Good evening. If you have a legal problem and want to know if you need a lawyer, you can discuss your problem with a lawyer by calling 1-800-642-3617, Tuesday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. That's 1-800-642-3617. On the LawWorks webpage at thelawworks.org, you'll find a listing of recent The LawWorks program topics and additional information about this show's topic. If you would like to recommend this program to a friend, you'll find a video of the program at the LawWorks website. You'll also find free video and podcasts of previous programs on YouTube and iTunes. If you would like to suggest a topic for a future program, or if you're a school teacher and would like to receive a free copy of this show for classroom use, send us an email to thelawworks@comcast.net.
The Law Works is produced in cooperation with the West Virginia State Bar, the Mountain State Bar, and the West Virginia University College of Law. The Law Works is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. The West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and justice system.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.